Welcome to episode 2 of Art Insiders. I am your host, Mrs. Dykman, a K through 7th teacher in a small town located in Wisconsin. Today I'm going to be focusing on something I've always teach my students at the beginning of the year, whether they're in kindergarten or all the way up to retired folk who are getting back into art. And that is perception. Perception is very important when it comes to art because not only are we portraying what we perceive of the world, but also we have to almost change the way we see as art, see what art is. So I had a really great discussion with my 6th and 7th grade students a couple weeks ago because, like many students before them, they either felt like they weren't good at art, quote, or they didn't understand really all the amazing things that art could be. And we had a conversation to kick off our class to broaden their minds, and I'd like to share that with you today. The first point is perception itself. What does it mean? I always say perception is how we understand the world from our experiences or what we've been told. Sometimes our perception of something is very small. We don't know very much about things and it's all we know. Or we could have a lot of experience in something that gives us a little bit more of an open mind. So a lot of students, we talked about their perception of art. Some people think that art is only drawing. And if you're not good at that, you're just done for. Art class is going to be rough for you. But it's actually quite the opposite. Art is so many different things. And it's all these different places in the world, to package design, to commercials, to even, as I tell my students, the table you sit on. Someone had to design that, and it's kind of like a sculpture. It had to function properly. Someone had to decide the height, the color, the negative space, and so on, so on. So the next point I transition to for all my students is that art is a universal language. And I ask them, what does universal mean? And I usually tell them that, it's something that anyone from anywhere in the world can understand. It's not a language that we speak. It's not necessarily even body language, because body language means different things in different parts of the world. But art is a way that we transfer things from our brain, down our neck, to the shoulder, through your arm, through the wrist, and then finally on that piece of paper or surface that you're using with the material. And it's transferring that idea or that picture that is in your mind and making it something that I call, wait for it, visible. Visible for everyone to see. And we also go, whoa, everybody, what does visible mean? It's out in the open, it's clear, people can see it right in front of them. It's not just invisible like the thought in your mind. So going back to how art is a language, we can speak to different things that we are feeling, that we see, what we believe in. It's a communication tool. So from there, I usually joke with my students that I'm going to pick them up, like with my little 2 pincher fingers, and plop them down in a place across the world. They don't know where they are, what the language is, what the food. All they know is that their survival depends on it, and we make it into kind of a fun story. And I love it when kids get kind of excited because they don't know what's going to happen next. And I tell them the first thing you have to do is find food. And you can go up and start talking to somebody. That might take a little longer. You could use your body to start making gestures, but depending where you at, they might think you a little cuckoo. So the best and most effective way we talk about is the universal language, art. I put them in the scenario that they are at a fishing port and they see a lot of fishermen. Their bellies are rumbling and they're super hungry. So I suggest that they could draw a picture of a fish, and that would clearly communicate what they need and what they're thinking to this fisherman. And that way, everyone knows what a fish looks like overall. Even if you haven't seen a fish, we could figure it out a little bit quicker than flailing our body around and trying to communicate. I then transferred this conversation with my 6th and 7th graders to how art is how we know history. Art is how ancient societies and civilizations have transformed into the culture we have today. And this is what I love about art history. Every civilization was able to learn from art, which helped them adapt to the environment. So, for me being a kid, I didn't always have a good visual of what was going on in history. I kind of got the who, what, when, what, how, but I wasn't like very picturing it. And when I discovered art history, it acted like a picture book for me. I was able to actually see how history transformed and different civilizations pulled and derived things from one another. These things could be religion, culture, food, even a way of depicting their culture through their art. So without art, we wouldn't be here today. And it's kind of crazy to think about, but I like to always implant this in my students' brain. So today we use art everywhere. Art isn't everything you use, what you do, and what you see, like I talked about the table. More common today, people use art as expression when words are not possible to describe feelings or experiences. I gave the example to my 6th and 7th graders of a war veteran. We all have not experienced that, experience of going to war and surviving and seeing things. And sometimes things are so painful, it's very difficult just to even speak it or picture it. But through art, a person can work at their own pace and transfer those images to a surface that others can see what they're seeing. And when we're able to see what other people are seeing, we build something called empathy or a better understanding of that. So that is where my degree in art therapy comes in. I have a bachelor in art therapy, and I always thought art was a very great way for people to cope with trauma in their life. And that's actually, fun fact, where my art education career began, was my interest in art therapy. But that's another story for another time. So because of art, we can understand one another. And then what I like to do with my students is I go back to when it all started, because we don't actually know, but we can kind of guess from the oldest art form that was found. And that is cave paintings. And I pulled up a couple pictures for my students to look at, and we kind of played a game, tried to depict maybe what was going on in those images. We talked about maybe what they used for paints and surfaces. And I gave a couple of examples of, different areas where these paintings are like 20,000 some plus years old. So to finish up our discussion on perception, I had my students do this fun thing in their sketchbook. After looking and reviewing the cave painting drawings, they had to draw a symbol, a very simple picture of something they wanted to communicate. They only had one color to use, or one drawing material, usually a pencil. And then they had to close their sketchbook when they were done with that. They only had a few minutes because I joked with them that you're in a cave. It's many, many, many years ago. And there's probably some wild animal that's trying to get you. So you don't have time to go into detail, but you got to communicate something. Made a couple of them laugh, my cheesy art teacher and me. So after they close up their sketchbook, I had them pass it to the person on their right. The person on the right then opened up the sketchbook and had to write down, being very respectful, because that is not their sketchbook. We talked about that's someone's property, what they think that artist is trying to convey, what message or meaning. And about 50% of my class got it right. They were so much more closer than what they what they thought. They were kind of in the ballpark range at least. And we found this out because when we passed back the sketchbooks, the artist then was able to see the feedback of their drawing. This is something I kind of did, just kind of thought of it last minute, and I'm really glad I did, because I had really good time seeing what their interests were, as always, but also how effective art truly is. I did an example on the board. I wrote my own language. I made up my own letters and like weird, I don't want to say scribbles, but wavy lines, dots, whatever. And I wrote a word on the board. And I had my students guess what the word was. A few of them were able to kind of pick it apart and say, okay, these two letters or symbols are similar, so they must mean the same thing. And then next to it, I drew a really crazy, like not very good sketch of a paintbrush. And then they got it almost instantly. I would say within 2 guesses. The first guess was usually painting, and the second guess was artist. My word was artist. And that was a clear example of, yes, we have language, we have symbol, we have those things, but drawing a picture is such a clear communication tool. So it was a really great discussion on perception, and I love talking about it. Another thing I do with my younger kids, K through 2, is I do this, it's usually when I kick off the year or the class, I do this lesson. It's a pair of glasses, and I actually can't take credit for this one. This was my mom's idea. I was a first year teacher, and I was brainstorming, and she came up with this awesome thing. Okay, it's called How I See the World, and every student designs these giant glasses. I have a template on a piece of paper. I print out a copy, and every student gets just basically a black and white outline of glasses. Again, this ties into perception, especially for my younger students. We talk about how the world is a beautiful place. There's so many places we can go, so many things we can see, and so many things we can do. Okay, I mentioned, maybe they have a family vacation or something, or places they want to see or go to, or things they would like to do. The main point to my talk with those kids is that our experiences affect how we understand the world. Experience meaning where you go, what you see, what you do, and they make us all unique because everybody has different experiences. Going a little sidetrack here, I always give the example of horses. The kids know I grew up with horses. Horses are amazing to me. My experience with them is very good. So the way I understand horses is that they are a wonderful thing. Versus somebody who's had a bad experience with horses, they may say, horses aren't my thing. I always give the example of, okay, you're trying to feed a pony a carrot and it actually bites your finger because, those fingers do look like a carrot. So someone may not have a really good positive experience with a horse. So they understand it differently than I do. And the kids really like that story, and I enjoy telling it to them too. So kids, if you're listening, yeah. But that transfers into how art allows us to express how we understand the world. And this is the point where I get a little crazy, and because I like saying this part. You take all your thoughts, your feelings, and your emotions, and you make it visible to those around you. Once again, the word visible comes to our classroom, and we talk about what that means. Art is like putting on a pair of glasses, I always say. And here's what glasses do that art does as well. It helps you see things differently. Sometimes, like glasses, it's a little blurry, especially if you're borrowing your dear old sweet grandma's, or it makes it super clear. It changes the light. Maybe if you're doing sunglass shades, your vision is now tinted. Or if you got some 3D glasses on, you got some nice color. I then asked the students, how does Miss Dykman see the world? I put on my big pair of glasses that I drew, and I do like this weird thing. I walk around and strike some a couple poses, and there's a lot of giggles and a lot of fun, and I truly enjoy doing this. If the kids don't think I'm weird at this point, they're doing pretty good. But I state that I want you to look at my glasses because what you see on the outside is what I'm seeing through my glasses. So as I strut my stuff around the classroom, I ask them to be really quiet and think inside their brain, how does Miss Dykman see the world? And take note to all the little things they see. And I really encourage them to have good observation skills. Look at the details, look at the side of the glasses, and try to put together the story that I'm seeing in the world. On my glasses, I have a drawing of my dog, Amari, and I talk about how she is like my whole world. Going home to her every day is just the biggest joy. And then on the other side of my glasses, a lot of kids note that it's some type of pasture, it's a place, there's a fence, and that it's nighttime. I usually ask them, how do you know it's nighttime? And they'll be like, there's a moon and stars. I'd be like, great. And then on the side of my glasses, there's words saying I love art, I love teaching, and a couple of symbols. I'll go into some stories. The main story I always share with my kids is about a wonderful experience I have, and that is that pasture fence. It's kind of like it's an empty pasture, it's an empty fence, but I tell them the story about how when I was their age, I used to ride my horse out in the middle of the night. No saddle, no reins, just kind of sitting on his back as he's chowing on some grass. And I lay way, way back on his back and I look at all the stars. And I talk to the kids about how this is just my most favorite place to be. It's my most favorite thing to do. And when I think of the world, my heart takes me to this experience right here. Because of this experience, I have a lot of the star patterns memorized. It's pretty cool. And I really do miss having this experience. So my horse just passed away this, October. And that's kind of how I ended up where I am a little bit as well. But that's another day. Anyway, the kids, I let them have a little bit of my personal life. I think it's pretty fun, especially how I see the world. Everybody's is so different, and this is how I make connections with students. And then on the side of my glasses, I mentioned symbols. I have a paintbrush because I tell them I'm not just a teacher, I'm an art teacher, and to top that, I'm a crazy art teacher. And I always ask them, would you rather have a mean, strict teacher, or would you have one that's slightly crazy? They usually go for the one that's slightly crazy. That's a good choice. I think so too. And to kind of end our lesson on perception and how I see the world, my favorite thing to do is take the time, and I tell the class, I'm going to go around and spend, a couple of minutes with each one of you. And that is that student's time with me. Use your glasses to show me what you see, and we start a conversation of how get to know them, fun facts, things they like to do in the summertime, if they have any siblings, so on, and I start building connections with them. And I truly enjoy doing this. It's so super, super fun. So, and I usually can get around the whole class in a class period with the remaining work time as they're all creating their amazing glasses and shades. So this is usually the beginning of my classes, so I thought it was fitting to start official episode with my podcast series. Thank you for listening today, and I'm very curious how you see the world, and remember that you can always do it through art and share your perception of the world in that way. Thank you so much, and listen in again soon. Thanks, guys.